in Pocatello, meaning Pocatello, Idaho. This one is also first person. I try to give it a certain voice, which, see what you think if you end up listening to it or reading it. But it's again a guy who's becomes a college football player, and I can't even remember his first name either, to be honest. But it's a kid from Gainesville, Florida. Was a pretty good high school player in Florida. He calls himself a white guy wide receiver, not that fast, pretty good hands. So he was recruited by schools, but not the high-end schools. But he wants to try to play Division I college football. He ends up at Idaho, fictitiously Idaho South in Pocatello, with Division I football, but it's slightly lower level. And he's, so he doesn't get a scholarship, but they allow him to walk onto the team, and they tell him, if you keep your head on straight and come to practice, work hard, and you come back for your sophomore year, then there's a good chance you will get a scholarship for the other 3 years. So he goes, sort of likes it. I mean, he likes the environment. He's there before official school has started. So the only people in the dorms are the football team, basically, and the cheerleaders, because the cheerleaders have to, work on routines early and all that stuff. Maybe the band is around. But he likes it so far. He can see the social aspects have a lot of promise. He likes being in Pocatello, the mountains, a small town. He just likes it. But I think it's the first day of practice. They're doing some kind of drill. They don't even have full equipment. They just have on the helmets and shorts and helmets is sort of what they do. They don't have the full shoulder pads and all that. They're not tackling or blocking or any of that stuff. But in a drill, he gets hit in the head anyway. Some guy runs into him by accident, or maybe some guy backs into him, his own teammate, when they're doing a little light scrimmage with no blocking or tackling, but big guy backs into him, hits him in the head, and sort of slightly knocks him out. And he thinks he's okay, but he ends up walking the wrong direction. One of those things when they take a break, walking, away from where the team is going. He's going towards the other end zone. So they call the ambulance, and they, lay him down. They put him on the cart and, the board and all that stuff, bring him in, test him. And he's okay, but he sort of realizes, if I give the wrong answers to these concussion protocol tests, maybe I don't have to play football anymore. But maybe I could still go to school and get a scholarship anyway, because it's not my fault I got hurt. I just keep going to practice, but not ever, going on the field, just standing on the sideline at practice or sitting down, and get the scholarship and go from there. He just decided, why, I'm not that good anyway, probably not going to be that successful anyway. Why get hit in the head anymore? So he becomes ornery and difficult, and he kind of lies in the concussion protocol test when they ask him a series of words and this and that, and to repeat them. And he can repeat them, but he repeats them intentionally incorrectly to throw off the doctors. So they keep reporting him as having concussion-like symptoms. And the coach is an old school guy, and the assistant coaches are old. They just want to kick his ass. I mean, they hate this guy, but they're sort of stuck with him. And so it goes on a little further. So I guess that's about enough right there. But it's the trials and tribulations of a guy's first year trying to deal with this situation he doesn't really want to be in. He likes being in the environment, likes being at the school, likes the social stuff, likes everything about it, but just doesn't want to do what he's been brought there to do, which is actually get on the football field anymore. And but it's one other theme that figures into this, and I run into this a lot with people, and I'm always kind of shaking my head after they explain it. But when you see people who were athletes when they were young, maybe in high school, and people ask them, what happened? Did you play later, play in college? More often than not, if they played in college, but it didn't work out that great, they'll always announce, but I hurt my knee my sophomore year, and that was it. They had a soccer scholarship somewhere. They were all set, and everybody's excited in high school for them, and they go, and then people run into them back in town, maybe at Christmas vacation or whatever. Hey, how's it going out there? How's your soccer? Oh, well, I hurt my knee. That generally means they weren't good enough. I'm always cynical about that, but once in a while it's true. But most of the time it means it didn't work out. They just weren't good enough to make the team. And that's sort of what this guy's running into. He gets in this bigger environment. He's sort of a, big fish in a small pond in high school, but like a lot of these guys, you get in a bigger environment. And everybody was a big fish in a small pond. Now, on a college team, and a lot of these people are more talented than he is and faster. And it's a hard thing to come to grips with sometimes. And so you can't. It's hard to go back to your town and just say, I tried college, but man, they're too good. I'm sorry, I just couldn't make it. I was no good. It's very hard to say that. So generally speaking, there's an injury that works into it. It's just I hurt my shoulder and I couldn't rehab it right, and never came back, and never came back the way it was, and it was a good experience, but until I got hurt, it was good, that kind of thing. So I'm kind of sticking in the needle a little bit about the way athletes sometimes who don't really make it as big as they thought they wanted to rationalize the situation. Okay, in Pocatello. In Pocatello, you hear plenty of guys and gals, former athletes, who, when it didn't pan out, say they hurt their knee. The other day, a woman sports reporter on the radio explained to the host that she was a star growing up, but then wrecked hers, so she couldn't take it to the next level. This is just one example, and it's understandable. People can't admit they weren't good enough. I was a pretty fair white guy receiver at Lincoln High School in Gainesville, Florida. What helped was our coach switched to the spread no huddle my sophomore year, and we threw it darn near every play. The spread was all about mismatches, and I had linebackers on me as much as DBs, and I put some numbers up. My junior year, I caught 72 balls for 1,654 yards and 18 touchdowns, which landed me on the Prep Max top 20 wideouts list for the state of Florida. My senior year, my stats weren't as good, as teams were starting to figure us out, and I didn't get as many touches. Of course, the no-huddle spread is all the rage now. I received over 30 recruiting letters in the mail my junior year, not as many after that. A few coaches came to my house, though they were grad assistants, not the high-up coaches. I compared notes with a friend of mine, a lineman who was making noise at Columbia, our crosstown rival, and he was getting visited by the real coaches and getting letters from the real D1 schools, which opened my eyes that mine were all second tier and probably tire kickers at that. The guys that did show up at my house, all of them about 22 years old, my dad sat down with and poured them a scotch. My dad didn't expect me to go anywhere. He expected me to go to work just like he did. He threw these guys off a little, interrupting their rehearsed speech with totally unrelated topics. Should you be able to go down to the corner deli and bet on pro sports? Should Obama take golf lessons? Are the Sports Illustrated swimsuit models too thin? When the dude got out of there, it's possible we stood out compared to other families he was visiting, but he probably just said, "What the fuck?" My senior year, I took a video class and I made a 3-minute highlight reel of myself, splicing together game footage of me at my best and throwing in me talking to the camera in the weight room and how I was a team player, even though I was not. The clip showed me strictly making plays, never a guy throwing me off a route or running me down from behind, which did happen. I put the video on YouTube and it took some work, but they have these databases that help you out, and I emailed the link to every D1 and D2 coach in the country. One guy did call me from the University of Colorado, the Pac-12, but I realized after a minute on the phone he had me confused with someone else. I heard from Albany State, which is not where you would think, but in Georgia. from Findlay in Ohio, Lane in Tennessee, Upper Iowa, and Western New Mexico. All Division II, and I would never have known any of them existed except off that database. Finally, I heard from Idaho South, Division I, subdivision, but still D1. They'd played the real Georgia a couple years back, got crushed, but were at least on the field with them at Sanford Stadium in Athens in front of 90,000. The head coach himself contacted me, which felt good, a new guy named Harrison Frank, who they hired off the Washington staff for his progressive passing scheme. He said I could walk on, but if I came back my sophomore year, I'd have a scholarship. My college football playing career lasted half a day. We were going without helmets and shorts, the pace slow, everyone getting a feel for the July heat and altitude in Pocatello, and the third hour they lined us up on special teams. They had us staggered, no one familiar with their positions, and the ball was in the air and I was drifting back when a defensive end named Edgar Carney collided with me from the blind side, catching me in the back of the head. What that idiot was doing, I'll never know. He lasted a year, got no playing time except a little mop-up, and I never saw him again. I didn't lose consciousness or even go down right away, but something didn't feel right. When they saw me walking toward the end zone when everyone else was on a water break, the trainers hustled out and I dropped to a knee, and they eventually put me on a cart and took me to Anderson Medical Center for tests. The doctor asked me a bunch of mental acuity questions, checking items off a list, and said I'd suffered a grade 2 concussion. Grades 3 and 4 were apparently worse. I was supposed to refrain from strenuous activity and obviously contact for 2 weeks and get reevaluated. I showed up for practice the next day, stood on the sidelines, and at lunch my receivers coach told me the head coach wanted to see me in his office. I spoke to that doc, Harrison Frank said. You're good to go. Excuse me, coach, I said. That wasn't what he told me. Those checklists, he said, the NCAA gives us leeway. If you didn't get knocked out, you can at least get back on the field. We'll make sure nobody hits you. I'm not all there yet, to be honest, I said. I had a rough night. I'd prefer to go with what the doctor told me directly. Is that what you'd prefer? Frank said, smiling at the receivers coach who was standing there with me. Get dressed and get on the goddamn field. Coach, with all due respect, I'm not getting out there today. Frank got up from his desk and grabbed me by the earlobe. Well, ain't you a piss-poor excuse for that Florida toughness I'm always hearing about? UW last year, we had a free safety coming off 2 concussions, probably got a third one sticking his head in there on a 4th and short early in the game. Get this, cracks a rib in the third quarter. They x-ray him, tape him. He knocks down the Hail Mary as time expires and we beat Arizona. I didn't say anything. That's how you identify who your winners are, the coach said. Not just on the football field, son, but in life. I stayed in street clothes for the next 2 weeks, and no coaches said a word to me, nor did many of the players except for a couple LDS guys, Mormons, from Salt Lake City, who treated me fine, but were also trying to convert me. Aside from football, I was enjoying the place. The campus was beautiful. You could see mountains, and Pocatello was friendly. The dorm was 90% empty since school hadn't started, and you only had athletes on campus so far, plus the cheer team, which was a bonus, but the social vibe was promising. This time the doctor was a young guy with a thin mustache who kept clearing his throat. I answered with an honest no when he asked about balance problems, neck pain, sensitivity to light, sadness, and all that. The doctor flipped the page on his clipboard and said, "Did you get hit hard, Scott?" "Not that hard," I said. "I took a couple worse shots in high school." That was my suspicion. So far, you're checking out beautifully. Part of the problem, the media is so all over the issue that we lose common sense. Meanwhile, I'm sitting on the examining table smelling the guy's cologne, thinking, you never played jack shit, did you? We'll conclude with a brief word recall exercise, the doctor said. You're probably familiar with it. I state 5 words and you repeat them back in any order. I'll do my best, I said. Elbow, apple, carpet, saddle, bubble. By this point, I'd made up my mind. Bubble, carpet, album? And, he said. That kind of caught me off guard, I guess, I said. Fine, let's try candle, paper, sugar, sandwich, wagon. Wagon, camel, bigger, apple, saddle? I see, the doctor said. How about baby, monkey, perfume, sunset, iron? I said, okay, I think it was maybe costume, fire, baseball, trump card? The guy put down the clipboard. I must say this is quite surprising on the heels of your initial baseline result. Not to mention somewhat disturbing. Uh-oh, I said. What month is it? The doctor said. Without hesitation, I answered December. What year is it? For some reason, an oldie song popped into my head where they kept going, in the year 2525. So that's what year I said it was. We finished 3-8, a big improvement everyone was saying over the last 4 years when Idaho South won 6 games combined. In the spring, they held an end-of-the-year banquet for all varsity sports at the local Red Lion. Coach was smiling and upbeat, and some boosters made speeches and gave him gift certificates. When the coach was back at his table and a 3-piece country band had started up, players began stopping by and saying a few words to him. I guess it was a tradition, so I got in line. Coach said, I know it was a tough year for you, but you'll be good as new come next season, right? I told him yes, hopefully he was right, but at the moment I was still experiencing symptoms. You know what? He said. Get out of my face. I noticed a girl at his table talking to a couple of the boosters' wives. I had her in a class, I realized, Communications 101, where we had to get up and make speeches. The first one being, tell us about your family and where you grew up and such. She never said anything about being the coach's daughter. The band wasn't bad, and they were slowing it down, working the intro of My Old Friend by Tim McGraw. I asked the girl to dance. Her name was Helen. She was nervous and wasn't particularly attractive, but she smelled like coconut and smiled the whole time. I play for your dad, I said. Helen said, I know who you are. I think you frustrate him. Yeah, but what frustrates me, I said, my all-time best 40, laid down nice and loose on a warm day in Jacksonville, a 4.9. So, she said, you have good hands. I've seen you on film. Is that right? You help with the game plan then, too? Come on, Scott, I'm just saying. What it is, though, I'm pretty sure I don't want to get hit anymore, most specifically in the head. I like your honesty, at least, she said, quieter. The band was playing Amarillo by Morning by George Strait. The lead singer not perfect, but pretty darn close with the inflection, and Helen put her head on my shoulder. The next day I went to see a guy in the athletic department named Link Gailey, who handled NCAA compliance stuff. Pretty sure Coach Frank isn't going to honor any scholarship next year, I said. Nor should he, Link Gailey said. You're dicking us around. That may be your opinion, but the Anderson people see it differently, I said. One way or the other, you know I'll be at every practice. You're a loser, he said. When I played here, I know. I said. You got concussed, right? Then you got a stinger. Then you got your nose broke and a finger in the eye where you couldn't see, but you sucked it up and stayed in there and made plays. Fuck you, he said, but that's actually pretty close. I said, how about I give you 5 words and you repeat them back in any order you want? Link gaily said, I see you walking around at night. I may truly kick your ass. A week later, Helen said, my dad, he doesn't want me going out with you. We were watching a women's softball game, Idaho South versus Weber State. The field pristine, the right field foul line angling toward the wide open Snake River Valley in the distance. I said, you'll have to make a decision then, won't you? She said, you dancing with me and so forth? That was because of him, wasn't it? It was. Nothing personal, but I wanted to piss him off. She said, well, I like you, a lot. But why couldn't you have torn your ACL? You mean a real injury, I said? That's not, it came out wrong. I get it, that's okay. Problem with the knee, you may never come back as strong, no matter how hard you rehab it. Don't I know it, she said. I played travel soccer in high school, I tore mine. And with it, I said, your college playing aspirations, they got derailed. Well, yes, that really is what happened. You know something, I said? What a crock. You weren't good enough, plain and simple. You have a lot of nerve, Helen said. A couple things happened that summer. The first week of practice, 3 players, probably our best 3 athletes, a tailback, a linebacker, and an option quarterback, all from L.A., got caught shoplifting snacks in 7-Eleven. Coach kicked the 3 of them off the team and out of school that day. There was backlash from the alumni and local media saying give them a warning, suspend them, okay, but geez, that's it? Maybe it was the stress from that or the heat or just the way he was. But a couple days later, Coach got into it with a senior guard named Walter Gaston, who he thought was dogging it during pass blocking reps. He grabbed Gaston by the face mask, let him have it, and then shoved him away. Gaston fell down, possibly on purpose, and the film guy caught it all from on top of the scaffolding. Everyone said even so, Coach would have survived the incident, except that on break, he went and tracked down the film and got rid of it. They promoted Dean McInerney, the defensive coordinator, a big fat guy who had been at ID South through 4 regimes and seemed kind of out of it. The next 3 years, we won 6 games. I never suited up once. They gave me the scholarship, provided I got retested every 90 days, which was fine by me. Now I work for the city of Gainesville. Not the most interesting job, but not the worst. The water department. Now and then, someone on my route recognizes me and mentions they saw me play at Lincoln back in the day. When they ask if I kept it up after, I tell them yes I did, out in the Big Sky Conference, though I hurt my knee, which held me back some.